Hello and welcome to Feral Plays Total War Warhammer 2. I'm your host Sam and with me is Alex.
Hi.
So we're going to jump straight in.
So to sort of like begin off with, we'll probably like jump in one of the new things to do with Warhammer 2, which is the Eye of the Vortex campaign. To sort of briefly go over what Mortal Empires is as well. Mortal Empires is a combination of the old world, which is the campaign and map that you saw in the first Warhammer, and the new world, which will be what we'll be covering in Eye of the Vortex. It combines them both in to basically create a grand scale campaign, similar to some previous other Total Wars. So we'll jump in with the Eye of the Vortex campaign. We've got a load of the new races that you can play within Warhammer 2, which were the High Elves, the Lizardmen, the Dark Elves, the Skaven, and the Tomb Kings.
Very nice.
Yeah. So in this instance, we're going to be jumping in as the Skaven, which is supposedly
the head taker.
Yes. So we're jumping in as a Skaven, as supposedly they were a well-requested race to play as within the Warhammer games. So we'll jump in. Most importantly, I'll let the cutscene play.
And plan, watching, waiting. When they emerge, it is a nightmare vision. The
Really like
Skaven,
the artwork,
a ravenous
the way they've done all the cutscenes.
Yeah, yeah.
It's really nice.
They really went to town with it with Warhammer 2 in particular.
They gnaw at the roots of the world.
And they've captured the absolute vibe of the Skaven as well.
They mean to rule over ruins, for such is the will of their god, the great horned rat. Only the island home of the High Elves has remained unscathed. And at its center is
There it
the
is.
great
The Vortex.
a swirling maelstrom that siphons chaos from the world. The Skaven covered its vast
like, just
power
looks
with
absolutely
envious,
Especially on
Absolutely.
the campaign as well.
Oh, yeah.
Looking at just that as it's rotating. It's
Yeah,
just
when we get a
absolutely
chance, we'll show it off.
very
Ten
nice.
comet is oft seen as an omen, but this time its wake has disturbed the winds of magic. In the secret halls of the Under Empire, the Council of 13 has gathered. A time to scheme of opportunity.
I kill dwarf things in Pillar City. No!
I really like the accents they give the Skaven rats as well.
Moors are puppet minion. Pestilence infest Lastria. Yes. But all warpstone
Badass warp thing, that.
Yeah.
Come, scribe slave. Work to do. Comet makes elf things weak. Council wants power of the vortex. Just as prophecy demands. So it too. You read markings on a black pillar. Then you know we must find the Screaming One. Find out how to control the vortex. Oh yes, master. But a large tribute of warpstone will that.
So they do sort of like cover like your objective to complete in the campaign that you are about to play for a cutscene.
It looked like it was about to start getting your first mission, like all
Yeah.
lined up, which is really nice. Actually, kind of builds into the story.
Yes, yeah.
I feel like you're very much part of the Skaven and what you're doing.
Oh, there's so much character in this game, particularly with all of its notable characters that you'll hear, and even just with the general units that you'll control.
Yeah, it's often my favourite thing is when you're clicking on the unit and they give you like a little, bit of back chat as you're ordering them around, and you're just like, yeah, I kind of feel like I'm one of you guys, although not a rat, but you know. So.
Yeah. And hopefully as well, we'll be able to get a chance to see the Abomination.
Oh, nice.
It's beautifully animated as well as terrifying to look at.
So what we'll do is we'll go through the first part of the campaign, just get a bit familiar with the race and how the sort of early part starts off, and then we have a later save, which will be really useful, which we can also show off and kind of see what the late game
because
be quite interesting.
Even though the Eye of the Vortex campaign is a almost a finite campaign, it will eventually end either when you complete it or one of your opponents complete it. So there's always that sort of, it feels more a lot quicker paced than the grand campaign that you might play. But like all things, it does take quite a long time to get through as well. So the late game will show off a lot of big things that are happening currently. So we'll sort of quickly go over some of the unique features when actually playing as the Skaven very quickly. It's sort of briefly mentioned here that generally what it's sort of saying is Skaven settlements will appear as ruins to all other races until they either scout it out or come to meet it with another lord. This can be very advantageous to you because they may not intentionally come out to siege your settlement initially, so they'll come over maybe sometimes with a small army so you can catch them by surprise.
Okay.
But also, Skaven have a food resource, and their food resource gives them certain benefits to increasing their growth and then eventually increasing leadership and public order, which can be very useful because the next part is the Skaven corruption. Now, Skaven corruption is actually beneficial to you to increase it, but actually having too much Skaven corruption can lower public order. So what we can do just very quickly is we can move them in to finish off the Lord. And in this battle, we won't need to actually fight it, so we'll auto-resolve this one as we know the outcome of it. This way then, it completely finishes off the Lord, that army's no longer a threat to us, and we get to enslave him again, adding even more food to the stockpile, which is actually, I find, to be a lot beneficial, so now we're getting +4 food rather than +2.
Yes, quick always wins.
So, our Lord is leveled up, so we'll sort of quickly have a look in and sort of look at what we can give him. Now, I particularly find one of the really great skills to level up is to increase the campaign movement by 10%. This just means particularly early on he has a greater movement range and he's able to get to places quicker. And because they are Skaven, they typically have a low morale than other races. Sort of increasing the Lord's leadership effects can help keep your Skaven clan rats in the fight just a little bit longer. So that's our Lord done. We can sort of now move over to the main settlement, our capital, which typically speaking you'll always be upgrading your capital up to the next level to begin with. Now, before we just end the turn and move on a little bit, have a quick look over the different structures you get. One of the unique features with Skaven is that pretty much every single structure will generate income for you. There's other races may have certain buildings that might have a penalty on income or a penalty on upkeep for certain units, but for Skaven in particular, every building will give you income, so you're always going to be on an increase in your economy every time you make a new building.
Okay, so rather than having to worry too much about finance, economics and units and things like that, you get a really good mix of just being able to go, well, whatever I build, I know I'm going to be able to
of course.
out of it, so.
There'll be different benefits to any of the structures you do, but most structures will also increase the Skaven corruption, which is again normally a good thing, but you may also want to be aware of increasing it too much in your own region, where you could be putting yourself at a negative public order. That's something to keep in mind. So for some players it may not be an issue because getting a rebellion army means more food.
Exactly, yeah. So it depends on how you play really. If you find that you're not able to fight your enemies too well, you can always fight the the rebels.
Yes, exactly. So we're in the first turn there. Move on. Now, for sort of like now, moving on to the second turn, ideally we want to definitely try and press the advantage on the elven settlements. You can sort of see what different settlements they have here. This can give you a vague, depending on what information it gives you, it can give you garrison information to let you know how many units there are there. So we may want to decide that maybe we, given our current state right now, we have lost a little bit. We may be able to do it, but it may be worth just moving back into our territory ever so slightly. And then this will allow us to enter replenishment, but also will allow us to recruit some units as well. So we may want to like top up on a few extra units so we have the absolute numerical advantage over our opponents. And as well, our building will take a few turns to do, so we'll move on to the next turn straight away.
Do we have a lot? Does Skaven have a lot of archer units?
Oh, so Skaven don't particularly have the greatest amount of ranged units, so they don't have archers in the traditional sense. We saw the warp throwers, so they have other units called globadiers, which throw either like poisonous bombs or sort of death globy bombs to do severe damage to your enemies. They also have night runners who are mobile ranged units which can throw knives at your enemy.
Nice.
So with this one, we'll get in immediately and get straight into a fight again. And with this, even though it's a siege and we're doing a face-on, there's so few units, we're very easily in this case able to surround the elven units and secure a relatively quite easy victory.
I would really not want to be an elf in this thing. Though.
It's a little terrifying to think about.
It's just, it just does not look like it's going to be fun.
So what we could do particularly maybe in this case is that we do have some storm vermin. Storm vermin are sort of like considered some of your top tier infantry units in this sense. So what we might want to do with the storm vermin in particular, since we know that the enemy is going to most likely be in front of us, so we probably might want to put the storm vermin onto the sides for now, and actually keep our clan rats sort of closer to the middle so they can absorb the brunt of the spearmen, and keep our halberdiers, storm vermin, to sort of then actually flank around, get into the rear of the spearmen and actually cause some routes to happen. And we don't need to worry about too much about our line for the archers, because we do have the menace below to sort of deal with this for us. Sort of a quick tip to sort of like when you're on the battle, if you ever want to select units really quickly without having to use the unit bar, you can click on a unit, move across to the unit you desire to click. By holding shift and then clicking, you'll select all units within the line.
Like that.
This also works up and down diagonally, so it draws a small line and selects all units within that line, because we know that we missed out one guy here, but that's intentional. So that allows us to group these guys together and then move them all as one unit very quickly and advance towards the enemy as so. We'll move up everyone else to sort of join them. And we'll sort of get the storm vermin to start also marching around and entering a flanking position. We'll sort of speed up time a little bit here, because typically speaking you could just go and rush them, but you may also suffer fatigue penalty by charging the enemy straight away, and fatigue, like in most Total War games, can play quite a nasty part in determining how effective your units will be at the battle. So we'll get these guys starting to move in a bit quicker. We'll also get the storm vermin to hurry along as well. And already we can sort of try and start making advantage of the the menace below and get them in to help them out, sort of tie up the arch units a bit longer and potentially start causing a rout. We've noticed that one of the arch units here have escaped. So what we could do is now, if we could pull out the rat augurs, and we can get them to tie up the arch units, because the rat augurs will outrun the elven infantry. So there isn't too much of an issue for the elven units then getting away. And then watching as the warp fire throwers again.
Just one hit.
Just one hit.
Just taking them down.
And that will cause them to rout very momentarily. These are a very dangerous unit at any point in the game.
Definitely a bad day to be an elf.
It is definitely a bad day to be an elf. And since the elves are trying to make a breakaway, we can cut off their escape.
And straight into
And causing them to turn around. And that will immediately put them down into wavering and eventually to rout. And luckily, we've never really
we haven't even needed to use
we haven't
the
needed
planks,
to use
like,
them. So in a way, that's a beneficial. It keeps our better units unharmed, ready for a fight where they are actually needed. And we didn't really suffer too many losses, all things considering. So, all in all, a good victory.
Yeah, very good.
So, one thing to sort of mention with the Eye of the Vortex campaign, it never really gets mentioned to you at the very start, but it is, and there is actually other win conditions that you can do.
Oh, right, okay.
So, obviously the first win condition is you complete all of the rituals and win the final battle.
Right.
That is one way to win the game.
Yeah.
However, what you can do as well, you can either through domination, owning over 50 settlements, either through direct ownership, through alliances, or through vassals.
Right, okay, so
But
if you find that you're too far behind on the rituals part of it, or you can see someone getting a really decisive advantage,
Yes.
you could go and play for the 50 rather than focusing on the
Though
rituals.
typically speaking, if you are trying to play for the 50 and try and do a lot of direct ownership yourself, you'll probably find as well you'll probably catch up in the ritual race. But if you sort of wanted to try and win through alliances, it's probably a good idea to try and ally with your other factions of the similar race. So for us, we would probably want to try and ally with all of our Skaven.
Right, yeah. And then that way we can use all the Skaven together
Yes.
and get the best benefits.
So, another thing about the Skaven that is a little bit different as well, Skaven have the ability to actually increase the settlement level by using up the food that they have. This is actually can also help you fast track settlements into building all the structures you need for them, but you do have to take into account it does eat up a lot of food, and these do give you some nasty penalties for it.
Yeah, it looks like you do suffer quite seriously for forgetting about food management
Yes.
as you do these
So
things.
you want to keep an eye on this. You really don't want to get somewhere low here. This
That's
spells
brutal.
really bad news for you. So in this case, we will probably go ahead and throw it up to a level 2 settlement straight away. This then gives us the ability to already to build another structure here straight away. So in this case, we may want to actually put down something to actually help with our replenishment and growth within the province. This will allow our settlements to grow quicker and allow us to continue building structures at a faster rate. And as well, you will be given quests over the course of the game to sort of earn more treasury and also earn warpstone very early on as well. So it's quite a good idea to try and complete the quests as quickly as you can to get a quick and early advantage.
So how much warpstone do we need to get to the first ritual?
So the first warpstone we will need 350. And you can see how much warpstone you're earning here. Through your mission. So we earned 8 warp stones for the mission, so over the next term we'll get those 8 warp stones in, and buildings will give you 1+. Not all settlements will give you Warpstone, but most of them will. So over the next turn, we should be getting 2 Warpstone from the 2 different settlements we have, rather than the 1 that we are getting from this turn currently. Now, it does mention that there were Warpstone sites. Now, the Warpstone sites you can see are here, and they have this label here to let you know. If you occupy these areas and you build the unique building for that settlement to get the Warpstone, you'll be earning 10 Warpstones at that one settlement.
So it really focuses where you want to be attacking, and
yes,
gives you an idea of where you should be heading towards in order to get the next advantage.
Absolutely. In this case, it is owned by another Skaven clan, which puts us at a little bit of an odds, because we have a few options of how we want to deal with this. So we can either try to befriend them and eventually increase our right to war with them enough to have them join our confederation, which means they'll join us peacefully, we'll get all of their settlements and their armies, or we can just take it by force. It depends on how you want to play it, because one way could be far quicker than the other. Spending your time increasing your relations with a faction, you could be losing out to some of the other races by doing it, but it does mean that if you wanted to be friends with them, you can still focus your attention elsewhere, rather than spending your military effort on trying to secure a location when you could just secure other areas for yourself.
Yeah, that's good to know. So you can at least it gives you the option.
Yeah, you have options.
If you want to be able to play militarily against other factions, but you still want to be friends with the Skaven, you can at least work on 2 fronts at the same time, rather than just being I have to kill everyone or I have to befriend everyone.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. In this case here, for Creek Headtaker, we do have a lot of clan rats at the moment, so we'll pick the pack leader to sort of increase the melee attack for our clan rats, and on future levels it will also increase their leadership, which is
pretty handy.
Always beneficial. It does tell us we do have a damaged building, so we'll quickly go ahead and repair it, because the naval ports, or the slave wharfs for us, do give us quite a substantial generated income and also growth within the region. Absolutely beneficial. Particularly early game, you probably do want to focus on growth, because your money situation won't particularly always be the worst off early game. And it's just as well we probably took that settlement as early, because there was another army. They were coming, but they have decided to back off. So we can level that up quickly. And for our main settlement, we will focus on getting a military structure, so we can actually get some better units out for us, for in case we can actually hire clan rats and clan rat spears. And in this case, there is a settlement here that isn't being used. Now, it's not to say that there may or may not be a Skaven there, but we don't know. So we could end up at this. It's unlikely, particularly in the early game, but it is likely you may see another Skaven faction here. We could, at this moment, we could choose to march, but we wouldn't be able to interact with this in particular. And choosing to march can be dangerous, because if an enemy army did come out and attack us, and we were to lose that fight, we would die. Like, your entire army would be wiped out in that case. So leaving us in this stalk state, it can keep us hidden on the map, because that is part of its ability. And it gives us the chance of ambushing for any armies that we do attack. We know what they're going to be doing, so in this case we will fast forward this, because we know that they're heading back.
Well, I noticed we also had the ability to use the underground.
Oh yeah, so we'll cover that. We'll actually cover that quite quickly. So we do have the ability to use the underway. Now the underway, as it says, you're immune to attrition. So if you're in areas that will cause you attrition, cause you lose units, that will not happen to you. It's a bit like marching in the sense of if you are attacked and you lose, you will lose your entire army. So there is some risk to it, but the benefit is we can't really see the benefit of using it here. But if I was to say, position my army here and use the underway, I can move them across this terrain.
Nice.
Instead of having to walk all the way around. So this is one of the benefits of the Skaven, that if you wanted to invade this sort of area but not have to spend time walking around, you can position a couple of your armies here and drop a few of them here, so that your forces are big enough so they won't be attacked immediately, and also give you time to sort of form together and then move out in a collective order. This also works across areas where there's ocean.
Right.
So you can position units here and you can move them across here. Again, entirely beneficial.
Pretty much nowhere safe.
Nowhere is safe from the Skaven. Sometimes, in some cases, you can avoid using ships altogether. So we'll go ahead and have a look at this settlement, actually
See
find
if we
out.
can find some more Skaven brothers.
Yeah, in this case it is completely empty, and in the case we will probably go and take it. It will use up some of our money, but we are fairly loaded at the moment, as all races are. All races are given in a hefty amount to begin with to allow them to sort of be expansionist fairly early game. Though it does mean we have lost some troops, so we will need to wait here for a couple of turns to ensure that we get our troops back. But we do have secured another settlement, and that also secures province. With Skaven, as Skaven as they are, you can either choose different commandments that either increases your public order, it can increase growth. This particularly I would almost sort of suggest, as it will increase the populace in your different areas and allow you to sort of upgrade your main settlement to higher levels far quicker. The martial planning will be something quite useful a little bit later on, to say once you've got yourself more established and you're ready to sort of expand even further out with your home region. And then the explorative planning, this is useful when you're in a pinch. If you feel like that you're suffering on food, you may want to use this to give yourself a slight edge and keep yourself going. One thing to kind of remember with Skaven in particular, every settlement and every army will use up one food.
Right.
So by expanding, you'll be using up your food more often, and it will require you to stay in combat longer so you can continue getting food and getting victories. Though some settlements will have unique buildings in their building chain that will allow you to build a building that generates food for you.
Right, okay.
Not all places will have it. It's sometimes difficult to tell which places will. Normally there may be a sign, a symbol next to them to indicate that you can generate food from them.
Right.
So in this case here, we will choose a commandment for growth to help us progress a little bit quicker. Also, an interesting thing, now we're on the topic because we've got a building slot here. If we say we were into the late game, you would have many settlements, probably. Sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to sort of figure out which settlement can I build in. Yeah. So you can move up to where the province tab is here, and where you can see the little hammer symbol, it means that there's building upgrades available. And this will take you to the menu here, and you can see that there will be different buildings upgrades available for you. It also lets you know about the other different provinces around you, which is quite useful to know, so you can sort of tell, like, you know, how they're doing, what sort of money you can expect to get from them, depending on the types of buildings they have. And also gives you quick overall information of what structures they have as well. So in this case, in this settlement, this one's not particularly too guarded, so hopefully we can actually move in and take this very quickly as well. As well, we'll probably throw another point into our pack leader to keep our clan rats in tip-top shape. Yeah, absolutely. We will throw this up to a level 2, and in this case, for this one, we'll probably throw in this one. Gives us a slight decrease in our recruitment costs, and gives us an untainted +1. That is also that helps with public order as well. So keeping your untainted in high levels is very helpful, particularly once you sort of start coming across other different types of corruptions, right. From like either chaos or vampiric corruptions. Though in this particular playthrough you don't have too much issue to worry about with the vampire races, but chaos That's another story.
Yeah.
But that'll probably be something we'll probably see in the later save.
Yes.
Reptile flesh is chewy. Make a great snack.
So in this case, we have the lizardmen demanding us to pay them. We can either choose to pay them, but there is no
benefits.
There's no benefit to it. They don't like you anyway, so we're not going to give them any money. Right. This also brings on to another point. The Skaven, like some of the other races in Warhammer, have the ability to do rights, which is almost like a little bit something similar to that some players may have seen during Thrones of Britannia. So in this, there'll be certain requirements you'll need to unlock the rights. They will give you a cost. They have a cooldown and how long the effects are in duration for. In this case, this basically gives us quite a large increase to our growth, food, public order and recruitment costs. This may be worth considering taking early on, as we've got low-level settlements which can highly benefit from a rather large increase in growth. So we will take it. So for the next 5 turns, we will get quite a large increase in growth. As you can see, we've got quite a large substantial growth now, and it won't take us very many turns to get new populous surpluses, which can be beneficial for our main settlements and our minor settlements as we go along. We'll upgrade that to a clan barracks so that we can start making use of clan rats with shields, which give them better defense in general, and also because they have a shield, they will reduce damage from archers firing at them.
Very nice.
These guys may be coming back for us, but they are rather small, so it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to see what they're actually trying to do.
They might be waiting for you to attack. And then
I mean,
sneak it from you.
it's very likely, because you know, one thing to note with your minor settlements, they don't get a great number of units with them, and particularly without a lord to back them up in leadership.
They don't have a lot going for them.
They won't have a lot going for them, unfortunately. Skaven are very dangerous if their leadership is kept high, but without a lord to sort of influence them in that area, they may fall trouble. We'll skip another turn again, so that we can actually get our guys up to a more substantial number. Looks like they may be trying to go for Dawn's Light, but we'll see how that plays out for them. Or
we may have some assistance from the people who don't even like us.
Yes. So this is another thing to sort of keep in mind as well. What we could do is just quickly have a look at the diplomacy, and we actually find out that these guys are at war with each other. So in fact, these guys are helping us out indirectly. We haven't told them to do anything, it just happens to work that way. So we actually have nothing to worry about from the elves. In this case, we will sort of go ahead and get in and perform another siege. Though in this case, this has walls now, which puts things at a much greater disadvantage for us. So we will throw in a couple of different siege equipment, which will be built over the next few turns. And we'll see how that actually goes for us. While that's happening, what we could do at this time is actually look into actually recruiting another lord for our thing. Now, one thing with Skaven to also note, Skaven have a loyalty mechanic. Higher the loyalty, less likely are to defect from you. Quite similar to how loyalty works in Thrones of Britannia.
Right, yeah.
Typically for Skaven, if they lose battles, their loyalty will fall. If you remove units from their army, their loyalty will fall. But if you recruit more units for them and they win more battles, they will stay loyal to Creek Headtaker. So in this case, you sort of may want to consider your options depending on what different lord and stuff you want to get. As in this case, this one has a very high chance of getting high loyalty. And he's a determined, which immune to psychology. That's quite beneficial. So he's more likely to stay in the fight for a lot longer. So we'll pop him out. We'll make sure he stays in the settlement, because this is one thing to remember when you hire lords. They start outside of your settlement, which can leave them prone to being attacked by an enemy army if they happen to be nearby.
Right.
Leaving them in your settlement means if the settlement's attacked, they will attack the settlement and its walls rather than doing an outside battle.
So it looks like, unfortunately, he got quite a low level of loyalty in the end.
Yeah, he didn't get the lord he wanted, but at least he got a 4. We could have potentially got a 1 with a 1, which could spell trouble for us early on. So in this case, we'll look at giving this guy some units, give him some spearmen to begin with. We could take advantage as well of our global recruitment, though like in the previous Warhammer, it will cost you more. The upkeep stays the same, but it will cost you more and may take a little bit longer to do it. But because we are on a large surplus of income, I don't see any issue with recruiting a few units through the global. It means we do bolster our numbers at a far quicker rate. And in this case, because of the growth we've got, we can go ahead and level up our main settlement. Ideally, I would recommend leveling up your main settlements as one of the main priorities, as you will unlock more slots. For each settlement unlocked, rather than the miners, you'll unlock 1 slot at a time. Though it's not to say you should ever ignore your miners, because they may provide unique buildings for them. Again, it's all really dependent on how you want to strategize your planning. Oh, we can see that they're definitely not wanting to deal with the lizardmen right now. Definitely wanting to try and get away from them. Though the lizardmen may give chase, which they won't.
It looks like they haven't.
They won't. They are backing away.
As long as they don't come towards us.
Yeah, in this case, we may have a slight issue where they do come towards us. Though the benefit is they will take a few turns, because they will have to land, which can use up a lot of their movement points entirely. So we may have a couple of turns in grace to actually perform our siege, and possibly do it without the elven reinforcements arriving. As for our lord here, we'll continue giving him a couple more units. Now, one thing to sort of note with the Skaven, you will need to build specific buildings to get ranged units. So your early game, you may see a lack of ranged units to start off with, unless you were to intentionally go ahead and build hidden lairs, which will give you access to the night runners, which will have ranged attacks for you. Though it would be really nice to sort of get ahead and get ourselves a weapon barrel at some point, which will give us access to the globadiers and the warp fire throwers.
Nice.
So we will be getting to that very soon. In this case, we'll just go ahead, upgrade a couple of buildings here. And in this case, particularly as Skaven, sometimes building certain resource producing structures may not be beneficial to you, because you may not be engaging in diplomacy as much, so you may not be trading as much. So these things may not be worth your time unless you plan to sort of ally with some of the other factions in the game. Again, it's very dependent. But in this case, we will throw in another structure. I think in this case we'll throw in another rattling warrens to increase our growth even further, which is the great thing. You can put multiple of the same buildings in different areas to increase their effects overall.
So one of the things that we did was ask the social media internet and everyone out there some questions about about just general stuff.
Yeah.
And we actually have some of those questions here.
Oh.
We have Eric on Twitter asks, will there be Vulkan support for that sweet, sweet FPS? Yes, there will be. And by the way, we do have more sweet, sweet Vulkan plans up our sleeves, but they're secret. So watch this space.
What just happened there during the question? We had a diplomacy from Clan Mordor. They actually offered to join the war with the elves with us, which in this particular case we may not actually really need them, but it does mean it does improve their relations with us, which is a good thing. So in this case, we may also want to consider actually being more friendly with this other clan. This may actually give us an opportunity to actually take the ritual trait from them through a non-violent means, which is almost very anti-Skaven in my mind. I'll give that.
I mean, if we're playing a Skaven, then surely we should just eat them and then
oh, of course. I mean, they're not our clan. So. Of course, we're going to be seeing this message pop up a lot because of all the growth benefits we're getting. Oh, this is a larger elven army, which could actually be problematic for us. So we may actually, on the next turn, we may want to siege the settlement straight away. Or we either decide to either disengage from the siege, which could hinder our plans ever so slightly, but it may be worth it to deal with a bigger threat. There's no real right or wrong way of doing it, but that's kind of like why we also had this guy here. We can now move this person to sort of try and meet them. He may or may not win, but at the very least, he can either slow this force down, which we have no idea what they have, apart from one unit of Valyrian Reavers. So, in any case, we'll see how our siege is getting along. We do have some siege towers and a battling ram, though the force balance of power is fairly even at the moment, though we do have use of the menace below. But we'll actually see how this fight goes out. Could be a very difficult one for the Skaven. But we do have to remember, they do have more range units than they do have melee units. We do have
a good force of archers there.
They do have a good force of archers, so trying to get up to their walls as quick as we can would be in our best interest.
Okay, so, next question. FA on Facebook asks a question about Proton.
Oh.
So, will it bring the end of GNU/Linux ports? So we're happy to say that we actually have lots of plans for Linux, including Warhammer 2, of course, as well as upcoming games like Total War 3 Kingdoms and Life is Strange 2.
Oh. Slight announcement drop there. So, one thing particularly as well, I'd probably definitely say, we do have the numbers advantage, and we do have quite a lot of space to use. So, one sort of fairly good tip as well, because they will be far spread out, is ideally sort of position units across the entire battle line. Because you may end up finding out that some areas will be completely undefended and allow you to get onto the walls almost unchallenged. Now, for some units, it may be worth holding them back, because the towers, while you can't see their range right now, I can absolutely guarantee you they will be able to start shooting you straight away.
This is one of the things that caught me out pretty early on when I was doing sieges, and I was just had a huge amount of guys just being held back from the battle, and I could just see that the numbers were just diminishing. Yeah,
so it's something that people do pick up on fairly quickly, but for any new players, it may catch them off guard ever so slightly. So, what I have noticed is on our battling rams we have storm vermin. I don't really want these guys here, so I'd rather take them off, because they will get shot to bits, unfortunately. And we'll put some squishier units in there, but we'll make sure that they're backed up by another group in case they don't make it. In that case, we have some units fairly spread out across the line. And hopefully what this will allow us to do is to cause the elves to completely thin out their lines, and we should be able to find a weakness. Now we'll start the battle, give a quick pause so that we can get some initial movement orders going. Like, as we can already see here, the wall's completely unmanned, the towers pose absolutely no threat to us. So it'll be a very nice and easy time for our Skaven to breach the walls. And in any case, we'll have these guys not advance just yet, but have the battering ram move up. These guys would be held just in reserve, just to run in and take hold of the battering ram in case that these guys end up losing too many people and routing, because they have positioned most of their archers here. So I don't expect this to go very well. In fact, it may not...
They are sacrificing themselves.
They are. So it may not even be worth trying to get them to try and breach the gatehouse here, which does mean we will want to try and secure a gatehouse elsewhere, which probably will be on this side. So we'll probably want to move, after we start the game again, move these guys over here, so that they can get through the gates once we secure them. So in any case, I will also get these guys to sort of help breach the walls anyway. They should be able to definitely get up there before they rout. And with these guys, we'll actually have them attack the unguarded side. And for Queek Headtaker, we will probably have him join the left-hand side. We'll have him just move up and wait until ladders get up so he can climb. And we'll fast forward the initial start of the battle to get things moving. Of course, I kind of expected this to sort of happen, which may actually mean that these guys may be able to make it, which would be beneficial because it would allow me to get the rat augers in very quickly. One thing to always sort of like keep in mind, particularly when units are climbing walls, though it is pretty almost common knowledge now, but some people do tend to miss this, which is the reason why siege towers are used. As long as we're being protected along their advance, while climbing, you'll probably find after most of your units have climbed, they will lose their fatigue. It may not happen just yet, but their fatigue will start dropping as they're climbing the ladders. This is most noticeable when you actually do it for your lord. Your lord will go from being fresh to completely winded very quickly. So in any case, we'll leave our clan rats here to deal with them, and we'll get our lord now to sort of join in with the climb. Unfortunately, they didn't make it. They have... Nope, they're going to rout again. Fortunately, these guys managed to make it up, which is almost a little surprising, but that's good for them.
Now, can your clan rats from the underground, can they come help?
Yes, they can come help. So we may want to push them in a position where they will come and join us. We can't put them on the walls, but you can put them onto the floor anywhere within the settlement, and they can come up and help deal with the archers on top. One sneaky thing you can do as Skaven, which is sometimes you can spawn your clan rats here and start immediately capping their victory point, which can sometimes pull some of the units away. Oh, we actually found out we're not actually that far away. So we will want to put these guys just a bit further back so they don't take up any unnecessary damage. Now, we'll get our storm vermin here to start charging the archers. They are armoured, so they will be able to take up some of that damage without dying. Like on this side, we will get the menace from below to help us out a little bit here as well. We have secured one of the towers here, but ideally we'd like to try and see if we can get this. So maybe we'll definitely try and get these units to rout here quickly, which they're doing a very fantastic job on this flank so far. And in fact, most of their archer units are now starting to be dwindled, so we won't have to worry too much longer from suffering from range attacks. I actually feel we are doing quite well. It's now shifted into our favour, which is
very nice.
Always very nice. Always very nice. So in any case, we will do a thing here where we'll attempt to capture this gatehouse from under their nose. And I hope this will start to soon start shifting from change and moving into our... Oh, in fact, we're still not out of range. Yeah, so now that they're, we can actually see their range, which pretty much stretches all the way to the end of the map. So in fact, trying to take hold of these is also beneficial for you, which we now do have. As we can see, we're almost just about to capture this. So we can get our guys to move into the gatehouse. And momentarily, we'll see the announcement to say that we've captured the gatehouse. We'll get these guys to move up because they don't have much longer left before they do dwindle away as being a temporary summon. Now, as far as things are going, what we could do, we could use our last one to try and remove the last archers, but I feel that may be a little bit wasted, and I don't want to use it on the spearmen because they won't be able to make that much of a dent so far. So we may want to just hold on to our last spawn of clan rats in reserve just for a little while longer, because this side's doing very well, while our other sides aren't doing too great. It will be offset once we've now got the outrogers in. And ideally for the outrogers, we'll probably just send them straight to the capture point, where they'll be uncontested, and the elves will be forced to either choose to fall back and engage the outrogers, which they will struggle with, or choose to maintain the walls and try and take as many of us as they can. Luckily this side's just about to be secured.
So very nearly.
So very nearly. Poor elves.
Just completely outnumbered.
Island ours.
Got a couple of archers trying to sneak around to potentially shoot some of us into the back, which isn't very nice of them. We've got our storm vermin now engaging the archers here. The storm vermin should be able to quite easily hold their own against the archers. The archers here have no armour, where the storm vermin do have an armour of quite a high value, so the archers will do very minimal damage to them, though we are suffering a slight morale loss here, though I do reckon they will be able to hold their own there.
So we also had Nick at the Linux Experiment asked if porting Warhammer helped us port Warhammer 2.
Oh.
And that's actually a really good question. Porting the first Warhammer game did help us port the second game for a start. They both used the same engine, which is CA's Warscape engine. So this meant that we could get through the initial stage of development much quicker, which gave us more time to focus on performance and graphics, which, you know, as you can see from this video, looks absolutely fantastic.
Very, very smooth. Decided to use my last spawn of clan rats to actually help and assist our lord. He is on his own at the moment, though he is holding off very well. He is a very able combatant by himself, though a little extra help is always very handy. Though he's a very vicious fighter, able to knock back several units at a time.
Oh god.
So,
Poor guy who just like
knocked off.
Like, just did not stand a chance.
So, quite very similar to like the first Warhammer as well with lords. You can either level up your lords to be very sort of command focused, sort of there to provide buffs for your units, or you can have them to be very combat focused, and in this case quite a very large number count for a lord, 177.
That's nice.
It's
that's a good kill score.
It's a good kill score early game.
Although I have to admit, it has been topped by the enemy archer unit there at 198. That is impressive.
Those are the sort of numbers you like to see when you're using archers, but not on the receiving end.
Not on the receiving
end.
It's partly why it's a horrific victory.
Yeah. But luckily we did actually come out on top of this one. They did have an entire unit held in reserve that didn't do anything and got no kills. They were at full strength. So they were down an entire unit for that entire game. Very beneficial for us, and we get
very well. We had 4 extra ones that we were able to use. So
It's
It gives you an idea as well of the sort of imbalance that you have to work with, and
Yeah.
you really want to be using the numbers as much as possible to your advantage.
absolutely particularly with the Total War Warhammer games. In Total War Warhammer 2 and more, now that you've got all these extra races added in, the asymmetrical balance is really high. One thing you will probably notice when we jump onto our later game save is how much of a number difference the Skaven do sometimes need to fight off against stronger opponents, which is not unusual.
Yeah. So should we take a look at the later game and
Yeah.
see how it affects? As we've done really well here. We've
Yeah, it's
defeated
a
several forces, and already in quite an early stage of the game, we're in really good position to kind of expand across the map.
It's a fairly strong start, yeah, absolutely. So we'll have a look at a later save to sort of see some of the end content with 154 turns in. In this case, we'll be able to now start seeing some of the units that you wouldn't see until far later on for the Skaven, like the Abomination. The Skaven also have a very fancy siege unit, the Doom Wheel.
Yeah, that's the one I'm most looking forward to seeing. It's definitely the most interesting one. Checking out stats for it as well was really good, as it has sort of multiple kind of like multiple ways of killing other units on the field with the warp lightning bolts and just being able to straight out flatten them as well, which is just absolutely brilliant for a unit to have that kind of multiple way of taking people out.
Fantastic harassing unit as well. It's one of those definitely units. A Doom Wheel unit definitely excels at sort of getting behind the enemy forces and picking on units all by themselves that can't protect themselves, like archers, other siege units as well with their crew. In this case, in this save, we've definitely expanded it a lot further. Though we have had problems with the lizard men. They are a very difficult foe to face. Though, as well, we've also have secured territory in another land. This was another Skaven faction who I managed to confederate and have now secured territory for them. Another thing to sort of notice as well, you may have noticed this. This is what happens as the ritual starting, and one thing we can definitely see here, when I mentioned earlier about Chaos Corruption, we do have a Chaos army here sieging us. From what I remember on this save, we did have another army fighting them, and they did lose, unfortunately, but their numbers have dwindled. One thing to remember, particularly with rituals, when you start a ritual, you always get invading armies coming for you, like either Chaos, or they will be armies of your race. They will always go for your settlements, so be prepared to defend them. One thing to sort of remember, when they do come in, you will see where they spawn. In this case, for these Chaos armies, they did appear around here. One common trick I saw people did try and do once, where they tried to position their armies around here to see if they could jump on them quickly. The game knows this. They will know you're trying to do that, and they'll find somewhere else to stick them.
Right. So you are going to have to... You have to just wait for them to appear and then rush to meet them.
Absolutely. Your best bet is, before you start the ritual, it will tell you which locations are your ritual sites. So you're best prepared to defend around these areas. We are at quite a crucial stage because we are one turn away from finishing. If we were to lose this ritual site, we would fail this ritual. One thing I've seen some players actually comment about the ritual sites when you're performing a ritual is that if you lose a ritual site before it ends, some people are worried that that your progress on the ritual finishes. That is not the case. As long as you've got these 3 ritual sites under your control by the last turn, you'll succeed. So you can lose a ritual site very early on, but you can get it back before the ritual's over and you'll be fine.
Right, okay, good.
This is sometimes why some people might wonder with enemy ritual sites where they've taken them, but the enemy have taken them back, but they still succeeded. So that can sort of clear up some confusion on that end. So, in any case, we can see that we've got quite a few turns here for our settlement to hold out, but what we could do, we can sally forth the defenders to sort of engage the enemy. We do have quite a sizable garrison here with some units here. We have some globadiers. We have the catapults and the lightning cannons.
Very nice.
This will be very beneficial to us, to the far more slower moving Chaos forces. Though they do have 2 Hellfire cannons, so this will be something we will want to deal with very quickly. In any case, we can sort of see, particularly in this case, there are several different choke points here. In some cases, this plays more into Chaos's favour, because they excel doing with front-up fights. We
having those more powerful units in a smaller space works for them.
Absolutely.
We can't use the flanking
we don't want to sort of, like, even though they may be weakened, these particular chosen Chaos Warriors, they will still put a very nasty dent into our units in a straight up fight. So in any case, we do have a much larger army this time, and in this case as well, we do have a sorcerer, our warlock engineer, and who can take advantage of the winds of magic. We either gamble it, which can either increase or decrease our winds of magic. So we'll see what that does for us.
No.
And gambling never pays. So we've learned. So in this case, looking at the terrain, we want to sort of consider placing artillery in a more favourable position. So our catapults could possibly be positioned here. They're not affected by terrain so much, because as they can... we have noticed as well, because placing them here, we have been able to see where some of their starting units are. This can also be beneficial before you actually start a fight as well, by positioning units elsewhere across the battle line, where you may be able to catch out units like this. So it's definitely worth sometimes grabbing one unit and thinning them across the line if you can't see where they are, just in case they're being hidden by terrain like this. So this gives us an idea of where they are, so we can definitely plan accordingly for this. And have the warp lightning cannons actually positioned in such a manner so that if they do choose to come around here, they've got a nice firing arc. In any case, we'll just quickly position our units in a way. We don't want to worry about too much, because we do have a severe numbers advantage. Globadiers. We'll get this fight underway as quick as we can. And like our slingers, we'll begin to start peppering them straight away. Now, this will be something we want to deal with very quickly, because those alone can be very devastating to us. Though we can attempt to counter battery fire them, but I will have these guys focus more on their infantry, because
they will ultimately be the bigger threat.
Yes, the Chosen are very nasty and are not to be trifled with under any circumstance. So we'll get some units to actually prepare and be moved out. I'm not expecting our gutter runners here with slingers to hold out for very long. They are there just to give us some minor damage to them. Their cannons are on the move, which is good. I do want the Chosen to be a little bit further away. So we do have a charge here from Chaos Knights, but luckily we do have Stormvermin with halberds, who have a bonus against large. And any unit that's on a cavalry, or larger than these sort of units, will be counted as large units.
Right.
So definitely, even if these were Clanrat Spearmans, would do much better chance at fending off the Chaos Knights than, say, my Clan Rats with just shields would do. So the Chaos Knights, knowing that they can't make a dent, will be retreating. In any case, we will actually press the advantage here and move them up. And with our Warlock Engineer, we'll wait for this charge to happen, and in fact we have left our flank slightly exposed here. In fact, but we have got a devastating hit.
Much of a difference in
But
blank range.
we can show off a bit here of the direct fire. We can aim it down close enough to sort of fire directly onto the enemy and get some nasty hits in.
Took him straight off his horse.
As well as we can see some units moving across here. We can aim our shot accordingly and get a very nice hit onto them. They are very tough units, but knocking out just 2 units of the Chosen with one shot is 2 less units you have to deal with. We'll have them fire across on them, and we'll have our clan rats from below just deal with the last of their Hellfire cannons. Now with our Warlock Engineer, we can put some even more hurt on the Chosen by using one of his spells, which causes down Warp Lightning. Very useful ability. Very useful ability. The ability does quite large damage, very good against armour, and Chosen are typically known to have armour over in the hundreds, so very useful for dealing some hurt onto them.
Any edge you can get.
Any edge you can get, absolutely. Luckily in this case, we are routing the entire enemy. There is one unit persisting, which is the crewman of the Hellfire Cannon, which in this case are Chaos Dwarfs.
It's a bad day to be a dwarf.
It is a bad day to be a dwarf. Not very good for them. Took off his head. Oh.
That's just brutal.
One thing that's really good about some of the characteristics of some of the Skaven, sometimes when they're fighting you may see them even use their tail, because their tail have blades on the end of them.
Oh, very nice.
So
such a handy extra little weapon.
Absolutely. Anything that can be used to attack with, the Skaven have got it. So, very easy victory against the Chaos, and it absolutely secures our position to allow us to complete the ritual. So one thing to note as well, particularly with Skaven, they typically don't have mounted units as such because they don't have any cavalry.
Right.
Though they're warlords, they can get a Rat Ogre mount. I'll check quickly to see if I do have a warlord that may have a Rat Ogre available to him, because there's a small point I like to try and make to do with lords and heroes with mounts. If I don't happen to have one, I can still briefly discuss it. In this case, we will just replenish our forces because our food situation at this stage of the game is doing really well. Though we didn't quite finish them off, but that's okay. We're not going to be worried about him at all. So in this stage of the game, because you will have more armies everywhere, trying to find out who and where can be a little difficult. Again, it's always very good to make use of the tabs up here, so you can sort of see all the lords you have. And like with Skaven, you can see their loyalty, though you won't be able to see the numbers unless you hover over it, but you can see by the colour to sort of generally get an idea of how well they're doing. In this case, we do have one person who's a little low on loyalty, but he's not been recruited, so we don't have to worry about him so far. In any case, we'll have a quick scan. We do have a warlord here. Okay, so he doesn't have a mount. Nor do I. Okay, so the point I want to make with this is that lords and heroes, most of the other factions can get mounts, either with a horse. It can even range up to being a hippogriff or a griffin, or even sometimes dragons. The mounts have their own very useful advantages to them, as in that it allows the lord to move quicker in the fight. It can give them bonuses to charging and such. But one thing to definitely be careful about with using mounts for them is that the mounts will cost them extra in upkeep. So every turn it will cost you that little bit extra each turn.
Okay, so you have to really think about if it's really worthwhile having, which is, it's got a good benefit if you
absolutely
want to get in and out of a battle really quickly, but it can be a bit of a downside if you're if you're strapped for cash.
Yeah. And also, just as well to remember, because they may be on a mount, they will also suffer from units that do increase their damage to large units. So spearmen against your lord on a horse, your lord will take more damage from the spearmen.
Yeah.
and vice versa. But also to remember as well, when you're maybe sieging, in this case, we can see that in this case that this lord has a horse. Sieging our settlement, if our settlement here was to have walls, in this case it does, this lord will not be able to get into our walls and actually fight us directly. He will have to rely on the bulk of his forces to take the walls so that he can come in through the gates. So sometimes when you're beginning your siege, sometimes it may be worth just popping in onto your character details, going into your details, and if you've got the option to take your mount off and you want your lord to fire the walls, take him off his horse. You save a little bit of money and your lord will have to fight alongside your men.
That's very handy.
So in this case, we do have a very large chaos force here. Very, very strong forces here. I do have a little bit of doubts about this sort of fight, though we have an entire settlement of forces. We have more storm vermin here, and another quite large army here to help us, which does have a doom wheel. In any case, we did get an ambush on them, which does give us the benefit of surrounding them immediately. And we do have the extra reinforcements coming to raid us.
Should we risk it and see if we can do an auto-resolve?
We can try and risk it. In this case, very close. Very close. Though, one thing to sort of do consider is that this wasn't a ritual site. So in this stage of the game, it's not a big deal. Because ideally, we're protecting this at this stage of the game. So sacrificing this area is not a big deal. We do have a large surplus of income. So in any case, as a tip, you can get your unit sacrificed, then go through and maybe recruiting another lord to replace and bolster your defences here. And as well, now we can actually get a chance to see a slightly larger roster of units you can recruit. We do have Skaven do have quite a lot to pick from. A lot of them do cover similar roles, but at the very same time, they all play very differently from one another. In any case, quite happy with what we've done so far, so we'll move on. And as all things with late game Total War games, the turn times can take very long. So at this stage of the game, you may want to consider moving things onto fast forward so that you can get through the turns. Though some players may wish to leave it on normal so they can actually see all the individual movements of the enemy.
I always find I'm always in two minds about it. Like sometimes I absolutely need to know what's going to happen.
Absolutely.
Especially if I'm feeling quite vulnerable in those situations, and then sometimes I'm like, no, I'm feeling pretty confident. I can take any
absolutely,
hits that
absolutely.
Suddenly appear with attacking the Empire.
Oh, in this case, this is a battle we're definitely not going to win, so we will just leave this to auto resolve. Though we did knock out a couple units, which is always useful to know. Though this settlement will go bye-bye. As a thing that you'll probably play. Oh, we have finished our ritual.
We have done it.
Upon the Grey Seer's orders, did the scribe visit the laboratories of Clan Moulder to secure strong specimens enhanced by the ritual for the labors ahead.
I mean, he looks pretty angry.
Oh yeah, it's so Skaven to do any and all sorts of experiments on each other.
Wow.
But Skaven,
and they come up with some of the most granular designs.
Are our lords fully apprised of Vulskreek's plan?
So, we hope you've enjoyed watching the video of us playing. As you can see, it's looking absolutely fantastic. So what I'll do... so we actually have one last question from Nightquill on Twitter. As his question was, the release date would be amazing, which is yes it would.
Yeah.
Moving on. So Warhammer 2. When can you expect it? So it's actually coming later this autumn. So keep an eye on our social media channels and keep an eye on on the news and make sure you're up to date. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.